I was 20 and home from college for the semester, back in the small town where the grocery store still closes at 9 and the parking lots feel like open ocean after dark. Loneliness is loud in a place like that. It hums in the refrigerator at 2 a.m. and clings to the condensation on your bedroom window. I tried to drown it in podcasts and homework, and then, like an idiot, I re-downloaded a dating app. His name was Evan. His pictures looked like something a machine dreamed about people, slightly too crisp, pores too even, eyes too symmetrical. Dark hair, warm brown eyes, a smile that hovered in that perfect space between shy and confident. The background of one photo had weird repeating patterns in the trees. Another had a watch whose hands lined up in a way that made no sense. It was all the kind of thing you only notice later, when your heartbeat isn't drowning the parts of your brain that do math. He liked me first. I had the gold thing, so I saw his little face in the grid like a hook baited with dimples. Boredom and curiosity reeled me straight in. We matched. He messaged. He was a senior at a college a couple towns over, studying informatics, which, in hindsight, is such a slippery word it might as well be a shadow. He typed fast and well, using punctuation like someone who'd rehearsed it. He laughed at the right beats. He echoed little phrases I used back to me in a way that made me feel seen. I told myself I should FaceTime, just to be safe, and when I asked, his first answer slashed through the warm water I'd been floating in. "Why do girls always want to FaceTime immediately?" he snapped. "I'm not a zoo animal." I apologized even though I shouldn't have. I said his photos looked very professional, almost too professional, and that I'd been catfished before. His typing paused, resumed, paused again. "Okay," he wrote. "Phone first. I don't like cameras. But I'll call." We talked for 3 hours that night. His voice was low and careful, like he was afraid of spilling something hot. He told me about his mother's garden and how basil doesn't forgive overwatering. He told me about running at dawn. He told me that he hated loud, messy bars and loved quiet, precise things: code, chess, fixing small electronics. It all clicked so neatly with me that the clicking itself should have been an alarm. But I wanted the world to line up for once. I wanted it to be easy. Over the next 10 days, we became us without ever meeting. He texted when I woke up. He texted when I clocked in for my lunch shift at the restaurant near the highway. He texted late at night, long mock-romantic paragraphs about how desperate he was to see me, how he would protect me, how he would tear apart anyone who tried to hurt me. He said it like a joke with teeth. I laughed in the chat bubbles because the alternative was to ask why I suddenly felt like prey. We set a date for Friday afternoon, meet at the Botanic Garden halfway between our towns. Public. Daylight. That was the plan. The night before, I pushed again for FaceTime. He resisted again, but less. 5 minutes, he said. No comments. When the screen connected, I saw a face I'd recognize in a crowd for the rest of my life, not because it was handsome but because it was wrong in time. It was him, in the way that a shadow is you, but everything had been pulled tight and paled out. His cheeks were hollow, the jaw sharper not with gym work but with absence. His eyes were the same brown but filmed with exhaustion, like there was dust on the lens. He kept the camera close, shoulders up. I couldn't see below his clavicles. "Happy?" he asked, too quickly. I said I was. I wasn't. We hung up, and I stared at my own reflection in the black glass until it began to look like a stranger's face pressed against a window. He was 2 hours late to the garden. When he finally appeared, he came from the wrong direction, not the parking lot but the small service path that ran behind the maintenance sheds. He was thinner even than the screen had confessed, all angles under a hoodie too big for him. He hugged me, and I felt bones through cotton. He smelled like clean laundry hanging in a room that never gets sun. "You look just like your pictures," he said, and I lied and said, "You too." We walked. I tried to shake off the itch of being tricked by photographs, the small ugly calculation of attraction I'd never wanted to admit I did. He asked if something was wrong. I said no. he asked again. I said no again. He stopped by the koi pond and turned to me with that bright, brittle smile. Do you just want to go home? He asked. I can tell when I'm being tolerated. I stood there with the filter grates humming under the water and the wind pushing the reeds like careful hands, and I wished I could split into two people, one to be polite and one to run. He let the silence fill with his breath. You're not attracted to me, he said for me. His tone made it a test: pass if you lie, fail if you tell the truth. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it, but not for the reason he wanted. Something tightened in his face like a wire. Right, he said. Well, have a good night. It was 4 p.m. He turned and walked away so fast it looked like he wanted to leave his body behind. I stood very still. People passed with strollers and reusable water bottles and sun hats, animate proof that the world does not swerve for private implosions. By the time I reached my car, my phone held 5 missed calls and a voicemail. The voicemail surprised me with gentleness. Hey, Evan said softly. Just wanted to make sure you got home safe. I'm sorry it didn't go how you wanted. Take care. I sat in the driver's seat and listened to it again, looking at the rearview. A man crossed behind my car carrying a bag of potting soil. My heartbeat forgot how to pace itself. I told myself to stop being dramatic. I went home, ate cereal over the sink, and told my parents it had been fine. The next morning I woke to a wall of text. It was like someone had peeled back the skin of his voice and let something cold and wet climb out. He said I was shallow. He said all girls only cared about looks. He said I had probably been texting other guys during the date. His proof was that at one point I'd tilted my phone away to silence a timer I'd set for my parking meter. He said he could look like his photos again if I gave him 2 months and a gym membership and a reason to wake up. He said I was cold and mechanical and that my religion, he'd pried that out of me in a late-night call, made me a hypocrite. He said he'd met a girl last week who doesn't make men wait and that she had a better body anyway. I typed a careful response at the prep counter during slow minutes of the lunch rush, the smell of fryer oil clinging to my hair even in texts. I told him he had lied to me from the start, and that was the unforgiving thing. I told him I had liked his mind, the quiet way he noticed how basil bruises if you tear it wrong. I said none of that could live beside deceit. I said I wished him peace and then I blocked him. He called anyway. The calls come through for a few seconds before the block kicks in, like a ghost putting its hand through a wall. The phone buzzed in my apron again and again, little bites along my hip bone. I shoved it deep into the pocket and tried to float above my own body while I reset tables and refilled waters and smiled. The world is full of women floating over themselves. By dinner close, I was so tired that the parking lot outside felt like a body of water I might drown in. Employees have to park in the far rows, away from customers. Out there the lights skip whole patches of asphalt, so you move through alternating pools of visibility and guesswork. I walked fast, keys in my fist, the old trick we all learn like a catechism. Halfway across I realized I'd left my water bottle in the server station. For the first time all day, something like instinct spoke without asking permission. Go back. I turned and went back inside. The hostess, Emma, a sophomore at my college, was shrugging on her jacket. You still here? She asked. Forgot my bottle, I said. Walk me out. We went together. The wind had picked up and dragged a paper napkin across the lot in a panic dance. When we reached my car, Emma clicked her unlock so that her dome light came on. That's when I saw the handprints. 2 perfect hands on my driver's side window, fingers splayed, palms pressed, an echo of heat and oil caught in dust. The prints were high, like someone taller than me had put their face to the glass and braced themselves to look harder. They weren't smudgy, careless marks left by a kid. They were deliberate. They were patient. Probably some kid, Emma said, because good people say the kindest possible thing first. The hands are too big, I said, and heard my own voice sound like I was speaking from inside a jar. She stayed with me while I started the car. The engine caught. I took a long breath and tasted metal, as if I'd been chewing a coin. "If it happens again, tell security," she said. "It won't happen again," I lied to both of us. The next morning I did tell security. The guard on duty was a quiet man named Alvarez who looked like he had been watching parking lots longer than I'd been alive. He pulled up the camera that covered the staff rows and scrubbed back to closing. "There," he said, tapping the screen with one knuckle. A figure stood in the soft cone of light 2 spaces down from where my car would be. Hoodie up, hands at his sides. He waited like waiting was his job. When a truck passed on the road, he turned his face slightly, and the light caught it just enough to show nothing. A blur. A smudge where features should be. He moved without hurry to my car, cupped his hands around his face the way people do to peer through glass, and leaned in. He stayed like that for too long. Then he crouched, out of frame, on the passenger side, exactly where the camera couldn't see. And then there I was, on the screen, walking toward my car. I watched my own body like it was a character in a movie who was about to make a mistake, wanting to shout at her from the theater seats. I saw myself stop, pat my pockets, turn. I saw the figure uncurl, step backwards into the ragged curtain of dark, and disappear. I saw my own oblivious back retreat towards safety I didn't know I'd chosen. Alvarez swore softly in Spanish. "You did right," he said. "You went back." I felt cold down to the nerves. "Do you think it was?" I couldn't make myself say Evan's name. Names make things too real. "Could be anyone," Alvarez said. Then he looked at the pause blur where the face should be and said, "Could be nobody." He printed stills and filed a report and told me he'd let the manager know. I nodded like a toy with a spring in its neck and went to roll silverware and napkins. At lunch I received a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. "You blocked me," Evan's voice said in my ear. It was flat now, drained of apology and fire both, like water standing in a dish. But blocking is just a way of pretending you don't hear. I'm good at getting around locks. I fix things. I find things. I'm very patient, Ava. He had never called me Ava before. He had always called me by my full name, formal and careful. Hearing him shrink, it felt like a hand on the back of my neck. That night, my mom asked me to run out for milk. I said I'd go in the morning. She said we needed it for coffee. It was only 8. The grocery store was only a mile away. I told myself I wasn't going to let a man I'd known for 10 days rewrite the map of my town. The parking lot there is smaller, but it has the same cheap lights. Inside, I moved on autopilot: milk, bread, cereal, a bar of soap. The cashier was a boy I'd had homeroom with in 9th grade. He said, "Hey, haven't seen you since," and I said, "College," and we did that small ritual where 2 people pretend they are not carrying their private disasters like sacks over their shoulders. When I came back out, there was a folded piece of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. My first thought was coupon. My second thought was parking ticket. My third thought, it's incredible how slow the body is to admit it's terrified, was recognition. The paper was the same pale blue our restaurant uses for waitlist notes. I didn't touch it. I got into the passenger side, reached across, started the car, locked the doors. The paper stayed trapped in the sweep of the wiper like a moth. At home, under the kitchen light, I used tongs to pull it free. The note was 3 lines in block letters. "You look better in person. Don't go alone to your car. Tomorrow I'll say hi." I stood there with the tongs in my hand and felt something inside me tilt. My mother said my name twice before I heard her. I told her I was tired and took the note to my room and placed it on my desk like a bug I needed to identify later. I didn't sleep. Every time the heat kicked on, the ducks whispered like a voice trying not to wake the house. I kept seeing those handprints on my window, the ridges of fingerprints like tree rings. The next day I asked Alvarez if he could walk me out after my shift. He said yes. Clothes dragged its feet. The bar back joked about someone leaving a whole steak knife in the bus tub. A glass shattered. The manager made the kind of tired speech managers make about team effort. People laughed too loudly. When the last table left, we did the ritual of wiping things that were already clean and pretending that mattered. Alvarez was waiting by the employee door when I clocked out. We stepped into the night together. It was colder than it had been, my breath ghosted. He scanned the rows with that slow, unblinking attention older men have learned on graveyard shifts. We walked. I listened for footsteps that weren't ours. In the far row, a light flickered, and the shadows jumped. At my car, Alvarez tried the door before I did, glancing through the glass with his hands cupped to block the glare. His shoulders relaxed. "Clear," he said, and I exhaled. We both saw it at the same time, a small black rectangle sitting upright under my windshield wiper, dead center. Not paper. Plastic. A USB thumb drive. "Don't touch it," Alvarez said immediately, and the relief in his voice burned off like fog. "Back inside. Now." The manager called the police. The words felt theatrical in my mouth, like lines from a show I was too young to be in. An officer came and bagged the drive and took my statement and asked if I knew who might be doing this, and I almost said Evan and then I didn't. Saying his name felt like handing him a chair at our table. I slept at a friend's that night, but sleep is a thing with a key, and mine didn't fit. When I finally drifted, I dreamed of a face pressed to a window, the breath fogging, the eyes two coins you can't spend. The next day, Alvarez told me the detectives had looked at the drive. It was empty. Not blank, empty the way a clean dish is empty, scrubbed, dried, placed in the cabinet. Whoever left it had wanted me to bring it inside. To plug it into a personal computer and give it permission to climb in. The thought made my skin feel too tight. That afternoon, my phone lit with another new number. A text this time. "Why did you involve them? They always make it worse. You don't have to be scared of me." I typed and erased, because there is no correct sentence for a situation that shouldn't exist. Finally, I wrote. "You scared me. You lied to me. Leave me alone." The typing dots appeared, disappeared, appeared. When the reply came, it was one line. It wasn't a lie. It was an older truth. That night, I put a chair under my bedroom doorknob even though I knew doors are only instructions we give other people, not laws. I woke at 4 a.m. because the house made a noise it only makes when someone is on the porch, the long thin complaint of the board on the left, the one my dad keeps meaning to fix. My heart ran in circles. I didn't go to the window. I didn't look. I lay still and watched my breathing turn into a small animal I had to hold. In the morning there was nothing on the porch. Not a note. Not a drive. Not a footprint. Just a dry ring where, sometime before dawn, someone had set down a cup of coffee and picked it back up. The circle was faint. If you didn't know the wood the way I did, you would have missed it. The cup had been heavy. It had compressed the grain into a bruise. I moved back into my dorm a week early. I told my parents it was for academic focus. I told my manager I'd take the spring shifts. I told Alvarez thank you. He squeezed my shoulder and said, "You don't owe him any more of your thinking." Sometimes I dream of the botanic garden, but in the dream the koi are gone and the water is still and black, and when I look down I see myself, distorted in the reflected lamps, and behind me a figure at the edge of the frame, waiting like a fact. In the dream I turn to look and wake before I can, and that is worse than seeing, because a thing you never look at can live in every corner. Every now and then my phone buzzes with an unknown number and my body becomes a tuning fork. Most of the time it's a spammer offering a warranty I don't own. Once it was an old friend. Once, late at night, it was a voicemail with no voice and no hang-up click, just the hiss and crackle of what might have been a car running in the cold, idle breath frosting. Time burning itself minute by minute, patient as a man in a hoodie learning the footsteps of a place that isn't his. I don't walk alone to my car anymore. I don't apologize for that. I tell women I love, if you forget your water bottle, go back. Let the universe call you dramatic. If you feel the itch that says a pattern is wrong, scratch it until it bleeds truth. If a face looks like it belongs to a cleaner, older version of itself, believe your eyes. Pictures lie, hands on glass do not. I tell myself the same thing, over and over, like prayer beads. I turned around. I turned around. I turned around. And on a camera under a cheap sodium light, you can watch a shadow realize it has to wait for another night.